She moved to the town that despised her and met the man who would change her life forever, even when the whole world said their love was impossible. Can you imagine being judged so harshly that every glance on the street feels like a conviction, every whisper a sentence? But this story happened in the rural countryside in August of 1923. Before we continue, tell me something in the comments. Where are you watching this story from? Write down your city and state, or your country if you are outside of the US. I read every single comment, and I love knowing who is following these tales from days gone by. And if you are enjoying this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. The afternoon sun of August was punishing the dirt road that cut through the countryside when Marina Sutton stepped off the wagon that had brought her from the neighboring town. She was 26 years old, but her eyes carried the weariness of someone who had lived far too long. Her black widow's dress, simple and mended in places, clung to her body with sweat. In her right hand, she held a small, worn leather suitcase. In her left, a wooden box where she kept her threads, needles, and sewing scissors. It was everything she owned in the world. Cedar Creek was a small town, the kind where everybody knows everybody, and news travels faster than the wind. Wooden houses and a few brick buildings lined the central square where the old community church stood. The commerce was small, just enough to serve the surrounding farms. The smell of dry earth mixed with horse manure dominated the air. Marina walked slowly down Main Street, feeling the weight of the stairs. Women stopped sweeping their porches to watch her. Men sitting at the general store paused their conversations. She kept her head held high even when she heard the first whisper. She already knew what they were saying. The words had arrived before her, as they always did. Mrs. Higgins's boarding house was a single-story building at the end of the street, painted white with faded blue shutters. Marina knocked on the wooden door 3 times. It took so long for someone to answer that she thought about knocking again, but then the door opened, revealing a thin woman of about 50, her grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. Mrs. Higgins examined Marina from head to toe with narrowed eyes. "You're in need of a room," she said with a dry voice, more of a statement than a question. Marina confirmed that she was and explained she would be staying indefinitely, that she was a seamstress and intended to work in town. The landlady sighed, crossed her arms, and said the room would cost $2 a week in advance, breakfast included. The price was high, Marina knew that, but she had no choice. She opened the small cloth purse she kept in her dress pocket and counted the coins and bills with care. It was the savings from 9 months of work in the previous town, before the rumors forced her to leave again. She paid for the first week and received a rusty key in return. The room was tiny. A single bed with a thin mattress, a wooden wardrobe stained by humidity, a small table with a basin to wash her face, and a small window looking out to the backyard. The walls had water stains in the corners, but it was clean, and that was already more than Marina expected. She placed her suitcase on the bed and sat beside it, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of her exhaustion. Her hands trembled slightly. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and tried to push away the memories that always returned in moments of silence. Marina was only 14 when she lost her parents to a fever epidemic that swept through the village where she was born. An only child with no close relatives, she was taken in by her paternal aunt and uncle who lived in another city. Taken in was a figure of speech. In truth, they turned her into an unpaid servant. She woke before the sun to light the stove, wash clothes in the river, clean the house, and cook for her uncle's family. At night, when everyone slept, she practiced the only talent she had inherited from her mother: sewing. Her mother, God rest her soul, had been a skilled seamstress. She had magic hands, they used to say. Marina learned by watching her since she was little. The tiny stitches, the right way to cut fabric following the grain, how to make an invisible hem. By 16, she sewed as well as her mother. By 18, even better, it was when she turned 24 that Arthur appeared in her life. He was a widower, a fabric merchant, 54 years old, and needed someone to keep house. Her aunt and uncle saw an opportunity to get rid of their niece and arrange the marriage. Marina accepted because anything was better than continuing to be a slave to her family. Arthur wasn't cruel. He was a quiet, hard-working man who smelled of mothballs and pipe tobacco. He treated Marina with distant respect. She cooked, kept the house clean, and mended his clothes. At night, he performed his marital duty with mechanical speed and then turned his back to sleep. There was no love, but there was no violence either. Marina learned to accept that as the most life had to offer her. 9 months after the wedding, Arthur died. It was sudden. He was eating dinner, complained of a sharp pain in his chest, brought his hand to his heart and collapsed onto the table. When the doctor arrived, it was too late. The heart simply stopped, the doctor explained. It happens to men of his age. Marina cried, not with passionate despair, but with the sincere sadness of losing someone who within his limitations had been decent. She wore the black dress and observed the mourning period as tradition dictated. It was at the funeral that everything began to crumble. Arthur's family descended like vultures on a carcass. His brother, Oliver, appeared before the dirt even covered the coffin, demanding an immediate inventory. He had snake eyes and a sharp voice. Marina still remembered the words he spat in her face. "You think you're going to keep what my brother built his whole life, you gold digger. You married him old and sick, just waiting for him to die so you could inherit everything." Marina tried to explain that she didn't want anything beyond what was rightfully hers, but no one wanted to listen. Her sister-in-law, Elise, spread around town that Marina had poisoned her husband little by little. There was absolutely no proof, but the lie took on a life of its own. The neighbors started to whisper. The sheriff went to the house to ask questions. The reverend refused to hold a memorial service. The inventory revealed that Arthur had debts. The business had been doing poorly for years. He had lent money he never managed to recover. Almost nothing was left. Marina took her share, a meager amount, and left town before the accusations turned into something worse. She went to another village, tried to start over as a seamstress, but rumors travel fast in the country. 3 months later, she had to leave again, and again, and again, until she arrived in Cedar Creek, where she hoped they would finally leave her in peace. Marina opened her eyes and looked through the small bedroom window. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. She stood up, washed her face in the basin with the lukewarm water Mrs. Higgins had left in the pitcher, changed her sweaty dress for another equally black but clean one, pinned her dark brown hair in a simple bun, and went out to see the town. Main Street was busier in the late afternoon. Families were returning from the fields. Children ran barefoot playing tag. Women chatted in the doorways. Marina walked slowly, observing everything. She needed to find work fast. The money she had would pay the boarding house for 3 more weeks, maybe 4 if she skimped on food. She passed in front of Mr. Jenkins' general store, where men played dominoes at wooden tables outside. Conversations died when she passed. Eyes followed her. She kept walking. She passed Mrs. Laura's fabric shop, a small building with shelves full of colourful rolls visible through the window. That could be a good place to offer sewing services. She made a mental note to return the next day. The church stood in the centre of the square, an old stone building with a bell tower that dominated the landscape. The doors were open. Marina walked up the 3 entrance steps and stopped in the doorway, letting her eyes adjust to the dim interior. It smelled of old incense and candle wax. A few parishioners were kneeling in the pews, praying quietly. She was about to enter when she heard voices coming from the left side of the square. It was women, 3 of them, talking loud enough for anyone to hear. Marina recognized the intention immediately. She didn't need to look to know they were talking about her. "That's her, the new widow who arrived today," said a shrill voice. "They say her husband died suddenly, just like that, out of nowhere." Another voice, deeper, responded with fake concern. "Poor man. He married a pretty young thing, probably thought he'd found happiness. Little did he know what awaited him." The third voice, dripping with malice, completed the thought. "She's already been run out of 3 towns. She goes from village to village, trying to find another rich old man to fall for her act. The men around here better be careful." Marina felt her face burn. Her hands clenched into fists inside her dress pockets. She wanted to turn around, face those women, and scream the truth. She wanted to say that Arthur died of a heart attack, that the doctor attested to it, that she never harmed anyone. But she had already learned that defending herself only made things worse. People believed what they wanted to believe. So she did what she always did. She pretended not to hear, entered the church and knelt in the last pew. She closed her eyes and tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. How long ago had God stopped listening to the prayers of people like her? Marked people, judged people, people who carried guilt they didn't commit. When she left the church half an hour later, the square was almost empty. The sun had set completely, leaving only the purple trail of twilight. Gas lamps were starting to be lit on the streets. Marina returned to the boarding house, walking close to the walls, trying to be invisible. Mrs. Higgins was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of stew and salt pork filled Marina's nose, making her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. The landlady informed her in a neutral voice that dinner was served at 7, and she could eat in the kitchen with the other guests or take it to her room if she preferred. Marina chose the room. She didn't have the strength to face any more curious stares that day. She ate alone, sitting on the edge of the bed, the plate balanced on her lap. The beans were bland and the pork tough, but she ate it all. Then she washed the plate in the basin, put on her nightgown, and lay down. The mattress was uncomfortable, too thin, letting her feel the wooden slats of the bed underneath. But Marina was used to discomfort. Before sleeping, she looked at the sewing box on the small table. Inside were her tools, her only means of survival. Threads of every color, organized by shade, needles of different sizes, sharp scissors, thimbles, buttons kept in small tins, measuring tapes, pins. It was her treasure. The only real inheritance her mother had left her was that skill. She needed to find clients. She needed to prove her worth through her work, show that she was more than the rumors. If she could win the trust of a few women in town, maybe the others would follow. It was always like that. It just took one door opening for others to open too, or for all of them to close for good. Only time would tell. Marina slept little that first night. The sound of dogs barking in the street, the noise of other guests' footsteps in the hallway, her own thoughts that wouldn't leave her in peace. She woke before dawn with aching muscles and the feeling that she had just lain down. Breakfast was served in the kitchen. When Marina went down, she found 2 other guests already seated at the long wooden table. One was a middle-aged man, a traveling salesman by the look of the large suitcase leaning against the wall. The other was a young man, perhaps in his early 20s, in simple farmhand clothes. Both looked up when she entered, examined her quickly, and went back to eating in silence. Mrs. Higgins served coffee with milk in a tin mug, biscuits with butter, and a slice of cheese. Marina ate quickly, thanked her, and left. She had plans for that day. Her first stop was the fabric shop. Mrs. Laura was behind the counter organizing rolls when Marina entered. She was a robust woman of about 40, with red hair starting to grey at the temples and freckles covering her face and arms. She looked at Marina with an expression that mixed curiosity and caution. "Good morning," Marina greeted with a firm voice. "My name is Marina Sutton." I'm a seamstress, and I arrived in town yesterday. I wanted to know if you might need someone for stitching, alterations, or custom dresses. I do any kind of fabric work. I can show samples if you like." Mrs. Laura remained silent for a few seconds that felt far too long. Her eyes scanned Marina from top to bottom, evaluating not just the clothes, but something deeper. Finally, she responded with a measured voice. "Look, miss, I've heard about you. News travels fast around here. I don't usually judge folks before I know them, but I also can't afford to lose customers because of gossip. You understand?" Marina understood perfectly. It was the same polite answer she received everywhere. It wasn't a direct no, but it was a definitive no. She thanked her and left before the humiliation showed on her face. She tried 5 more establishments that morning. The cobbler, the grocery store, the barber shop where she asked if they needed someone to mend towels, even the dry goods store. All the answers were variations of the same polite refusal. "Not hiring at the moment. We already have someone for that. Maybe down the road. Come back another day." The midday sun was beating down hard when Marina finally gave up and sat on a bench in the square, in the shade of an oak tree. She was tired, hungry, and feeling despair begin to tighten her chest. Without work, the money would run out in 3 weeks. And then what? Where would she go? How many more times would she have the strength to start over? That was when she heard the sound of wagon wheels and horse hooves. It was a large convoy, 3 wagons, loaded with grain sacks and timber, pulled by teams of strong oxen. At the front, mounted on a sleek black horse, came a man. Marina looked up and saw him. He was tall, must have been over 6 feet, with a strong body but not heavy, the build of someone who works the land but doesn't know want. He wore dark riding breeches, leather boots up to the knee, a light linen shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows revealing muscular, sun-tanned forearms. A wide-brimmed leather hat shaded his face, but even so, it was possible to see the sharp features, the stubble darkening a strong chin, eyes that observed everything with quiet attention. He rode through the square slowly, guiding the horse with the natural assurance of someone born in the saddle. The men at the general store stood up to greet him, tipping their hats in respect. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery," they said in chorus. He nodded, answering the greetings with a deep voice that Marina heard even from a distance. The women sweeping the sidewalk stopped to watch. One of them, a lady in a floral dress, took the chance to start a conversation. "Mr. Montgomery, you won't forget the church social on Sunday, will you? We're counting on your presence." Raphael replied that he wouldn't forget, but his tone lacked enthusiasm. It was an automatic response, polite but distant. He continued guiding the horse until he stopped in front of the dry goods store. He dismounted with fluid movement, tied the reins to the post, and entered the establishment, followed by 2 of the men from the wagons. Marina watched it all without realizing she was staring. There was something about that man that commanded attention. It wasn't just the posture of authority or the obvious respect everyone devoted to him. It was something subtler. A quiet sadness in his slightly slumped shoulders, a loneliness in the way he moved, as if he carried an invisible weight. She recognized it because she saw it in the mirror every day. Who is that? Marina asked an elderly woman passing near the bench carrying a basket of greens. The lady looked toward the store and answered with the obvious pride of someone talking about a local celebrity. "That is Mr. Raphael Montgomery, ma'am, owner of the Montgomery estate, the biggest around here. Land that goes on as far as the eye can see. Fine cattle, cotton crops that turn a profit even in a bad year. Widower for about 4 years now, poor soul. His wife Clara died in childbirth. It was a terrible tragedy. Since then he lives mostly reclusive, only comes out of the estate when he has to. He's a good man, fair to his workers, pays on time, helps those in need. but they say his heart died along with his wife." The woman kept walking, leaving Marina alone with that information. She looked back at the store, thoughtful. Widower, lonely, rich but unhappy. For some reason, that touched her in a strange way. Raphael came out of the store 15 minutes later, carrying a burlap sack of supplies. He tied it to the horse's saddle, checked if the wagons were ready to leave, and then paused. His eyes scanned the square, as if looking for something, until they found Marina. Their gazes locked. It was only 2, maybe 3 seconds, but Marina felt the impact like a physical shock. His eyes were dark brown, deep, heavy with that sadness she recognized so well. He observed her with an expression that wasn't judgment, nor morbid curiosity. It was something closer to recognition. Then he looked away, mounted his horse and left, followed by the wagons. Marina sat on the bench, unable to move. Her heart was beating faster than normal. She shook her head, trying to shake off the strange sensation. It was ridiculous. The man just looked at her like he would look at anyone in the square. It meant nothing. But for some reason, she couldn't stop thinking about those sad eyes. The following days were difficult. Marina continued knocking from door to door, offering her sewing services, but the answers were always the same. The women of the town treated her with polite coldness when it wasn't open hostility. At the boarding house, Mrs. Higgins kept a professional distance, never rude but never friendly. The other guests ignored her. Marina spent her afternoons alone in her room, mending her own clothes to keep her hands busy and her mind away from the despair that was starting to grow. At night, lying in the dark, listening to the sounds of the sleeping town, she wondered how much longer she could hold on. It was on Thursday, 6 days after she arrived, that everything changed. Marina was returning from another fruitless morning looking for work when she saw Raphael again. He was in the square talking to the reverend at the church door. He wore similar clothes, dark trousers and a light shirt, the same leather hat. But this time he was on foot, without the horse. She slowed her pace unintentionally, observing discreetly. The reverend, a thin man in a black cassock with white hair, spoke with exaggerated gestures. Raphael listened in silence, nodding occasionally, with a patient but distant expression. That was when 3 women appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Marina. The one in the middle was older, must have been 45, wearing a dark green silk dress that screamed money, dirty blonde hair styled in an elaborate updo, a handsome but hard face. The other 2 were younger, clearly followers of the first. The woman in green crossed her arms and looked Marina up and down with barely disguised contempt. "So you are the widow who goes around offering herself from door to door," she said with a voice intended to be low but loud enough to draw attention. "I am Margaret Montgomery. My brother is the most important man in this town, and I will not allow people like you to bring a bad name to Cedar Creek." Marina felt her blood run cold. Margaret Montgomery, Raphael's sister. She tried to step aside, murmur an apology and keep going, but Margaret took a step, blocking her path. People in the square began to look. Marina saw out of the corner of her eye that Raphael had also noticed that he had interrupted his conversation with the reverend and was watching the scene. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Marina replied, keeping her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I'm just trying to make an honest living, if you'll excuse me." Margaret gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Make an honest living? Everyone knows what you are. A gold digger who killed her husband and is now looking for the next victim. Well, let me tell you, you won't find anyone here. This is a town of decent folk. It would be better for you to pack your bags and leave before things get worse for you." Marina felt tears of rage and humiliation burn her eyes. She blinked hard to hold them back. She wasn't going to give that woman the satisfaction of crying in front of her. She took a step to the side, trying to pass, but one of Margaret's friends also moved, blocking her. That was when a deep voice cut through the air. "Margaret." It was just one word, but the tone made everyone freeze. Raphael had crossed the square and was now a few yards away from them. He took off his hat, revealing straight brown hair with grey strands at the temples, and looked at his sister with an expression that brooked no argument. "What is going on here?" Raphael asked, although he clearly already knew the answer. Margaret dropped her hard expression and flashed a forced smile. "Oh, Rafe, we were just talking to this new girl who arrived in town. I wanted to make sure she was finding everything she needs." Her voice dripped with fake kindness. Raphael looked away from his sister and looked at Marina. It was the second time their eyes met, but this time up close. She could see his features better. His face was masculine, angular, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes and mouth. He must have been about 38, maybe 40, but there was something young in those sad eyes, as if part of him had stopped aging the day his wife died. "You are a seamstress," Raphael said. It wasn't a question. Marina nodded, not trusting her own voice. He stood in silence for a moment that felt like an eternity, then continued. "I have clothes that need repair at the estate. Dresses, linens, curtains. It's all been stored away for years. If you're interested in the work, you can come to the Montgomery estate tomorrow morning. My foreman, Frank, will give you the instructions." The silence that fell over the square was absolute. Margaret's eyes went wide, her mouth gaping. Her friends exchanged shocked glances. The Reverend, who was still at the church door, frowned. Marina felt everyone around her freeze in surprise. She herself wasn't sure she had heard correctly. "Are you offering me work, sir?" she managed to ask with a weak voice. Raphael nodded once, a brief movement. "I am. The pay will be fair. If you do a good job, you'll have guaranteed work for a few weeks, maybe months." Marina felt something expand in her chest, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and a strange emotion she couldn't name. "I accept," she said quickly, before he changed his mind. "You can be sure I will do my best work. You won't regret it." Raphael put his hat back on, nodded briefly and turned to leave, but before walking away, he stopped beside his sister and said in a voice low but firm enough for Marina to hear, "The next time you think about publicly humiliating someone, Margaret, remember that your last name doesn't give you the right to be cruel. That young woman has done nothing to deserve your scorn." Margaret turned red with anger and shame. Her friends averted their eyes. Raphael left the square without looking back, mounted the horse tied in front of the store, and rode off in a smooth canter. Marina stood in the same spot, still processing what had happened. Around her, the whispers began. People commented in low voices, looking from her to the trail of dust Raphael's horse had left. Margaret shot a look of pure hatred at Marina before turning and stomping off, followed by her two friends. Marina walked back to the boarding house on Cloud 9. For the first time since arriving in Cedar Creek, there was hope. Work meant money. Money meant survival. And more than that, working for Raphael Montgomery, the most respected man in the region, meant that maybe, just maybe, people would start to see her differently. But there was something else, something she tried not to think about, but that persisted like an ember hidden under ashes. The way Raphael had looked at her, the way he had intervened without her asking. The strange sensation that took over when he spoke with that deep, firm voice. Marina shook her head, dismissing those thoughts. It was gratitude, nothing more. The man had been kind in a moment when everyone was cruel. Of course she felt grateful. Anyone would. It meant nothing beyond that. It couldn't mean anything. But that night, lying in the darkness of her tiny room, Marina discovered she couldn't stop thinking about those sad brown eyes, and how for a brief moment they had seemed a little less lonely. Marina woke before the sun rose. She had slept poorly, waking several times during the night, with her stomach churning from nervousness. When the first light began to filter through the small window, she gave up trying to sleep and got up. She washed her face with cold water from the basin, Trying to chase away the fatigue, she chose the least worn black dress she had, the only one without visible patches, and pinned her hair in a tight bun. She looked at herself in the piece of cracked mirror hanging on the wall and saw the reflection of a woman too thin, with deep circles under her eyes and a tense expression. She took a deep breath. Today was the day to prove her worth. She took her sewing box, checked if she had everything she might need, and went down to have breakfast. The kitchen was empty. It was still too early for the other guests. Mrs. Higgins was preparing cornbread on the wood stove. She looked at Marina with surprise. "Up early today," the landlady commented. Marina explained that she had work at the Montgomery estate and needed to arrive before 8. Mrs. Higgins raised her eyebrows with an expression that mixed surprise and something resembling respect. "So it's true what they're saying around town. Mr. Montgomery really hired you?" Marina confirmed as she drank the hot coffee with milk. Mrs. Higgins fell silent for a few seconds, then said something Marina didn't expect. "Look, miss, I don't know what happened in your life before you got here. It's none of my business. But I'll give you some advice you didn't ask for. Do your job right, don't give cause for gossip, and maybe folks will stop talking. Mr. Montgomery is a respected man. If he trusted you, that's already half the battle." Those were the first kind words anyone in Cedar Creek had directed at Marina. She felt a lump in her throat and thanked her with a choked voice. She left the boarding house when the sun was still low, painting the sky pink and gold. The Montgomery estate was 4 miles from town, following the dirt road that cut through pastures and crops. Marina went on foot, carrying her sewing box and enjoying the cool morning before the heat became punishing. The path was beautiful, surrounded by dense vegetation on one side and open fields on the other. Birds sang in the trees. The smell of earth and dew-wet grass filled the air. She passed other smaller farms on the way. Workers were already in the fields. Some waved curiously, seeing her pass. Marina returned the greetings and kept walking, feeling her feet start to ache inside her old boots. When the gate of the Montgomery estate appeared ahead, Marina stopped to look. It was an imposing structure made of solid wood, with the estate's name carved into a plank at the top. Beyond the gate, an avenue of imperial palms led to the main house visible in the distance, a large 2-story building painted white with a red clay roof. The gate was open. Marina walked through and continued up the avenue, observing everything around her. To the left were the corrals with thoroughbred cattle she couldn't identify, but were clearly expensive animals. To the right, the cotton fields extended in organized rows as far as the eye could see. Workers were already in the crops. She heard the distant sound of voices and tools. When she got closer to the main house, she saw it was even more impressive up close. A wide porch with wooden columns, tall windows with shutters painted dark green, a garden in front with well-tended flowers. It was the kind of place Marina never imagined she would enter one day. An elderly man was sweeping the porch. He had white hair, sun-weathered skin, a lean but still strong body. He wore simple work clothes and had the calm expression of someone comfortable where they are. When he saw Marina, he stopped sweeping and walked down the porch steps. "You must be the seamstress the boss hired," he said with a raspy but gentle voice. "I'm Frank, the estate foreman. Mr. Montgomery told me you'd be coming today." Marina introduced herself and shook the calloused hand he offered. Frank had a firm grip and clear eyes that examined her without judgment, only honest curiosity. He explained that Raphael had left early to attend to matters in the neighboring city and would only return in the late afternoon. In the meantime, Frank would show Marina what needed to be done. He led her inside the house. The interior was even more impressive. Floors of wide waxed planks that shone, dark, solid wood furniture, walls with paintings of rural landscapes, a crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling of the main hall. Everything impeccably clean, but with an air of abandonment, as if the house was too big for the person living in it. Frank took her to a room upstairs. It wasn't the master bedroom, but it was still spacious, with a double bed, a huge wardrobe, and a window overlooking the cotton fields. The wardrobe was open, revealing dozens of dresses hanging, all covered with white sheets to protect them from dust. "These are the clothes of the late Miss Clara," Frank explained with a soft, respectful voice. "She died 4 years ago, but the boss could never bring himself to get rid of her things. It all stayed stored here. Now he's finally decided it's time. He wants you to alter what can be used, mend what's torn or stained, and separate what's beyond saving to be thrown out." Marina approached the wardrobe and touched one of the dresses delicately. The fabric was fine silk, light blue, with delicate embroidery on the neckline. Clothes of exceptional quality, the kind she rarely had the opportunity to work on. There were also linens folded on shelves, curtains, tablecloths, everything of the finest material. "It's a lot of work," Marina murmured more to herself than to Frank. He agreed. "That's why the boss said you can come every day, from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. There's a room in the back you can use as a studio. I'll show you. Lunch will be served in the kitchen at noon with the other workers. The pay will be weekly, $12. Marina's eyes went wide. $12 a week was more than double what she expected. It was enough money to pay the boarding house, eat properly, and still save a little. Frank noticed her surprise and smiled slightly. "The boss is a fair man. He pays well for good work." He took her to a small room at the back of the house that had good natural light coming from 2 large windows. There was a large table, chairs, an old but still functional dress form, and even an antique Singer sewing machine. Marina felt like crying with relief and gratitude. It was everything she needed, and more. Frank left her to settle in and went to attend to his own duties. Marina spent the first hour just taking inventory of the work. She took all the dresses out of the wardrobe, examined them one by one, separated them by condition and type of repair needed. There were at least 30 dresses, 15 sets of bed linens, 8 pairs of curtains, and several tablecloths. Work for 2 months, maybe 3, if she did it with care and precision. She started with a moss-green cotton dress with an unstitched hem and some missing buttons. Simple work, good to start and get into a rhythm. She sat in the chair near the window where the light was best, threaded the needle, and began to sew. The hours passed quickly. Marina was so concentrated that she only realized how much time had passed when Frank knocked on the door, letting her know lunch was ready. She put away her work and followed him to the kitchen. The estate kitchen was huge, with a 6-burner wood stove, a long table that easily fit 12 people, shelves full of iron and copper pots. It smelled of home-cooked food, strong spices, and wood smoke. There were already 5 people sitting at the table. Frank, 2 women who must have been the cook and her helper, and 2 young men who worked in the fields. Everyone looked when Marina entered. Frank made the introductions. The cook was Hattie, a robust black woman of about 50 with a wide smile and a powerful voice. The helper was Benedita, a shy girl in her early 20s. The young men were Joe and Michael, brothers who worked the crops. Marina greeted everyone and sat at the end of the table, trying not to draw attention. Hattie served generous plates of rice, beans, beef stew, collard greens, and grits. It was simple food but plentiful and well-seasoned, the best Marina had eaten in weeks. During lunch, the workers talked among themselves about farm matters, the cotton harvest, a calf that had been born at dawn. Gradually, they included Marina in the conversation, asking polite questions about where she came from, how long she had been sewing, if she was managing to do the work the boss asked for. Marina answered without giving many details about her past, focusing on the present and the work. She realized that these people didn't judge her like the townspeople did. Maybe because they worked for Raphael, maybe because they were used to accepting different kinds of folks. Whatever the reason, she felt for the first time in a long time that she could breathe without a weight on her chest. Hattie, who clearly had a soft heart, wrapped 2 pieces of cornbread in a clean cloth and handed them to Marina. "Take this for an afternoon snack, child," she said with motherly affection. "You're too skinny. Need to eat more." Marina returned to the sewing room with a lighter heart. She continued working all afternoon, finishing the green dress and starting another one of beige linen that needed adjustments at the waist and a patch on a tear in the shoulder. Her fingers moved with automatic precision, the fruit of years of practice. Every stitch was perfect, every repair invisible. She was so focused she didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. She only realized she was no longer alone when a deep voice said her name, "Marina." She lifted her head so fast, the needle pricked her finger. Raphael was standing in the doorway of the room, still in travel clothes slightly dusty, hat in hand. The golden late-afternoon light entering through the window illuminated half his face, leaving the other half in shadow. "Good afternoon," Marina said, standing up too quickly, almost knocking over the chair. "I'm sorry I didn't hear you arrive, sir." Raphael made a gesture with his hand, indicating she didn't need to stand, but she was already up, nervously wiping her hands on the apron she had put on to protect her dress. "I came to see how the work is coming along," Raphael explained, entering the room. He was even taller than Marina remembered, and in the small space of the room his presence seemed to occupy all the available air. He looked at the separated dresses, at the sewing machine, at the dress she was mending. "You are doing a good job," he said after examining the green dress she had finished. "The stitches are perfect, invisible." Marina felt her face warm up at the compliment. She thanked him in a low voice and explained that she had learned from her mother that sewing was the only thing she really knew how to do well. Raphael nodded in silence. He stood there for a few seconds that seemed eternal, just looking out the window at the cotton fields outside. Marina didn't know if she should say something or wait. The silence was strange, but not uncomfortable. Finally he spoke, still looking out the window. "I want to apologize for my sister's behavior yesterday. Margaret can be difficult sometimes. She had no right to treat you that way." Marina was surprised by the apology. She shook her head. "You don't need to apologize for her, sir. And I thank you very much for defending me, for giving me this opportunity. You don't know how much this means to me." Raphael finally turned and looked directly at her. Again those deep brown eyes, heavy with ancient sadness. "I know what it's like to be judged for things we cannot control," he said in a low voice. "I know what it's like to carry guilt that others place on you. Maybe that's why I understood something in your look yesterday." The air in the room seemed to shift. Marina felt her heart beat faster. There was something in that sentence, in the way he said it, that created a connection fragile as a spiderweb between them. Two strangers recognizing the same wound in the other. "You lost your wife, sir?" Marina said softly. It wasn't a question. "I am very sorry. Frank told me. It must have been very hard." Raphael's expression closed off a little, but he didn't look away. "It was, still is. There are days I wake up and forget for a second that she isn't here anymore. Then I remember and—" He cut the sentence short, shook his head. "Sorry, I shouldn't be discussing this with you." But Marina shook her head. "You can speak. I understand. When my husband died, even though it wasn't a love match, I felt the lack of his presence, of the routine, of the company. And later, when everyone started accusing me of things I didn't do, I started to miss even my own identity. To be seen as a person, not as the monster they said I was." Raphael observed her with a different expression now, softer. "You didn't do what they accuse you of," he said. "It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Marina felt her eyes sting. I didn't. My husband died of a heart condition. The doctor attested to it. But his family needed someone to blame, and I was the easiest choice. It is always like that, Raphael murmured. People need villains for their stories. I know that well. When Clara died in childbirth, there were those who whispered it was my fault for insisting on the pregnancy even knowing the risks. As if I could foresee it, as if I didn't carry that guilt alone every day without needing them to throw it in my face. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. Marina and Raphael looked at each other, and in that moment, something changed between them. It wasn't just boss and employee. It wasn't just loneliness, recognizing loneliness. It was something deeper starting to form, fragile and frightening. Would you like to tell me about her, Marina? About your wife? Raphael seemed surprised by the question. He remained silent for a long time, then nodded slowly. He took Marina to the main hall, where a portrait hung on the wall. It was an oil painting of a young woman, perhaps 30 years old, with blonde hair in an elaborate style, a light blue dress, a soft smile, and light eyes full of life. Clara, Raphael said simply. We married when I was 28, and she was 25. It was a marriage arranged by the families, as most marriages were back then. But we were lucky. We got along well. She was kind, intelligent, liked to read. She turned this house into a home. When she got pregnant, we were happy, but the pregnancy was difficult from the start. The doctor warned of the risks. I should have... He broke off, his voice cracking. Marina lightly touched his arm in an instinctive gesture of comfort. You couldn't have known, sir. No one can predict these things. Raphael looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. His eyes shone with moisture. That is what I try to tell myself every day, but the guilt doesn't disappear. Marina pulled her hand back, suddenly conscious of the intimacy of the gesture. She stepped back, trying to recover the appropriate distance between boss and employee. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be intrusive. You weren't, Raphael said quickly. It was kind. No one talks about her with me. Everyone avoids the subject as if Clara never existed, as if not talking about her makes it less painful, but it only makes it lonelier. I can listen, Marina offered in a soft voice. Whenever you want to talk about her, or about anything. I know we don't know each other, but sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers. Raphael smiled for the first time, a small and sad smile, but real. Thank you. And you can call me just Raphael. No need for sir. Marina felt her face warm up again. It would be strange. You are my employer. Raphael shrugged. Inside these walls, I am just a lonely man talking to someone who understands. No need for formalities. Before Marina could respond, they heard the sound of horse hooves outside. Raphael went to the window and his face closed. It's Margaret, he said with a tired voice. She must have heard I returned from the city. Indeed, minutes later, Margaret walked through the front door without knocking. She wore a burgundy riding habit, matching hat, and wore a furious expression. She stopped upon seeing Marina in the living room, and her mouth tightened into a thin line of disapproval. So it is true, she spat the words. You actually brought this woman into our house. Raphael turned to his sister with his patience clearly exhausted. It is my house, Margaret, not ours. And I hired Marina to do a job that needs to be done. It is not your business. Margaret gave a humorless laugh. Not my business? Raphael, this woman is accused of killing her husband. She is a fortune hunter, and you bring her inside the house, let her touch Clara's clothes. Enough, Raphael cut her off with a voice that allowed no argument. Marina did nothing she is accused of, and even if she had, you have no right to judge her. Mind your own life, and let me mind mine. If you like hearing what I'm writing, leave your like on the video and share it with whoever you think will like this story too. This helps me a lot to keep bringing these stories to you. Margaret looked from her brother to Marina, eyes burning with anger. Fine, she said with a dangerously calm voice. I won't say another word. But when this tramp steals everything you have and leaves you destitute, don't come crying to me. She turned and stomped out, slamming the door hard. The silence that remained was awkward. Marina felt small and ashamed. I should leave, she murmured. I'm causing trouble between you and your family. It's not worth it. But Raphael shook his head firmly. You are going nowhere. Margaret is wrong and needs to learn that. You are welcome here. He looked out the window where the sun was beginning to set. It's getting late. Let me ask Frank to take you back to town in the wagon. Marina wanted to protest, say she could walk, but she accepted because she was truly tired. Frank took her in a small wagon, chatting about light subjects along the way. He was a good man, Marina realized, loyal to the boss, but also kind-hearted. When she arrived at the boarding house, Mrs. Higgins asked how the day had been. Marina told her about the work, about the dresses, about the fair pay. She didn't mention the conversations with Raphael or the scene with Margaret. Some things were too private to share. That night, Marina lay down exhausted, but with a strange feeling in her chest. It was hope, she realized, hope that maybe she could rebuild a life there. But there was also something else, something more dangerous. The memory of those brown eyes, the feeling of Raphael's deep voice saying she was welcome, the way he looked at her when she touched his arm. No, Marina scolded herself mentally. Don't think like that. He is your boss, a rich, respected man, still mourning his wife. And you are the widow no one accepts. Nothing can happen between you. It would be disastrous. But when she finally slept, she dreamed of golden cotton fields and sad eyes that recognized hers. The following days established a routine. Marina arrived at the estate at 8, worked until noon, had lunch with the other employees, continued working until 5, and returned to town. The work was extensive but pleasurable. She loved the feeling of transforming old and abandoned clothes into beautiful pieces again. Raphael appeared in the sewing room almost every day. Sometimes he stayed only a few minutes, asking how progress was. Other times, he sat in a chair near the window and stayed there in silence, just watching her work. It wasn't an invasive or uncomfortable look. It was quiet company, two lonely souls sharing the same space. Gradually, they began to talk. Small things at first. Raphael commented on the estate, on the challenges of the cotton harvest, on memories of childhood on those lands. Marina spoke about her mother, about the things she learned sewing, about places she had lived. They never spoke directly about the feelings growing between them, but it was there, present, like an invisible third person in the room. In the way Raphael's eyes softened when he looked at her, in the way Marina's heart raced when she heard his footsteps in the hallway, in the silences that didn't need to be filled with words. It was in the second week that something changed. Marina was working on a particularly delicate dress, dark blue silk with pearl embroidery. It was clearly one of Clara's favorites. It had been worn and cared for with love, but time had yellowed some parts and torn the lining. Raphael entered the room and stopped when he saw the dress. His expression changed, becoming distant and pained. "That dress," he said with a rough voice, "she wore it on our 5th wedding anniversary. 2 months before—" He didn't finish the sentence. Marina immediately put the dress aside. "I'm sorry. If it is too difficult to see these clothes, I can work on other things first." Raphael shook his head and approached, touching the fabric delicately. "No, it's all right. Actually, it's being healing. Seeing these clothes coming back to life, knowing they will serve someone again instead of just rotting in the wardrobe." Marina observed his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the sadness in his eyes. Without thinking much, she said something that was in her heart. "She must have been very loved, Clara. You can see it in the way you, sir, the way you keep her memory." Raphael turned his face and looked at her. They were close, Marina sitting and him standing beside the chair. "She was loved," he agreed, "but not in the way she should have been. I was a good husband on paper, provider, faithful, respectful, but never burning, never passionate. We got along, we had affection, but it wasn't that love that consumes." "Do you know what I'm talking about?" Marina nodded slowly. "I do. It was like that with Arthur, too. Affection, companionship, but no fire. I used to wonder if I was wrong for not feeling that passion people talk about." "Maybe both of us never knew that passion," Raphael murmured. "Maybe we were destined for practical, comfortable, safe marriages. Or maybe," Marina dared to say in a low voice, "we just hadn't found the right person." Raphael's eyes fixed on hers with new intensity. The air in the room seemed to run out. Marina felt her face burn, suddenly conscious of the boldness of what she had said. She looked away quickly, returning attention to the dress with trembling fingers. Raphael stood there for a few more seconds, then stepped back. "I need to go see the workers in the field," he said with a strange voice, louder than normal. "I'll see you tomorrow." He left quickly, leaving Marina alone with her heart beating like a drum. What had she done? Why had she said that? Now he was going to think that she wanted. "But you do," a small voice whispered in her mind. "You want." Marina buried her face in her hands. This was a disaster waiting to happen. But the next day, Raphael returned, and the day after too, and the next, each time staying a little longer, each time talking a little more, each conversation deepening, touching more intimate places of the soul. Raphael told her about the loneliness of being a widower in a society that expected him to remarry soon, but didn't understand he couldn't. He told her about the sleepless nights, the guilt that ate at him, the feeling of being trapped in a grief that didn't end. Marina told him about the humiliation of being accused unjustly, about having to start over so many times, about the fear of never belonging anywhere. She told him about the loneliness of being judged before being known. They shared similar pains, and in pain they found connection. But there was more. There was the way Raphael smiled when she made a witty comment. There was how Marina caught herself fixing her hair when she heard him coming. There were the looks that lasted seconds too long. There were the hands that almost touched when he took something she offered. It was attraction growing on dangerous ground. It was Hattie, the cook, who first noticed. One day when Marina was helping wash dishes after lunch, Hattie said casually, "The boss is different, lighter. Haven't seen him smile like that in a long time." Marina felt her face heat up. "Must be the harvest going well," she murmured. Hattie laughed low. "Child, I'm old enough to recognize when a man is interested in a woman, and to recognize when a woman is interested back." Marina almost dropped the plate she was washing. "It's not like that," she protested weakly. "He is my employer, nothing more." Hattie just smiled with the wisdom of someone who has lived too long to be fooled. "If you say so, but be careful, child. Folks in town are already talking, and Miss Margaret is furious." Hattie's words echoed in Marina's mind for the rest of the day. People were talking. Of course they were. Her, the suspicious widow, spending entire days at the house of the richest man in the region. It didn't matter that there were a dozen people on the estate as witnesses that nothing improper happened. People saw what they wanted to see. When Raphael appeared in the sewing room in the late afternoon, Marina was tense. He noticed immediately. "Has something happened?" he asked with concern. Marina bit her lip, debating whether she should speak. Finally, she decided on honesty. "People are talking about me coming here every day, about us." Raphael frowned. "We aren't doing anything wrong. You are working. being paid for it. Where is the problem? The problem is that I am the widow no one accepts, and you are the most important man in town. The problem is that your sister already hates me, and now I'm sure she is spreading horrible gossip. The problem is that maybe the gossip has a grain of truth, Raphael finished for her in a low voice. Marina froze. Her heart raced. She looked at him and saw in his eyes the same conflict she felt, the same fear, the same desire. "Raphael," she whispered, "we can't." "I know," he replied. "It would be complicated. It would be looked down upon. It would cause trouble for both, especially for you. I know all that, but—" He took a step closer. "I can't stop thinking about you. I wake up thinking about coming here to see you. I spend the day looking for excuses to enter this room. At night, I look at that portrait of Clara and feel guilty because it isn't her I'm thinking about. It's you." Marina felt tears burn her eyes. "Me too," she confessed. "I think about you, and I hate myself for it because it's wrong. It's dangerous, and I've already caused enough trouble in my life without needing to cause more. But when you walk into this room, everything gets better, lighter, like I can breathe for the first time." They were very close now. Raphael raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Marina didn't pull away. He touched her face delicately, his thumb caressing the curve of her cheek. His skin was rough, but the touch was gentle. Marina closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel. It had been so long since someone touched her with tenderness, so long since she felt desired, seen as a woman and not as a problem. Raphael leaned in, his forehead touching hers, breaths mingling, hearts beating out of rhythm. The kiss was millimeters from happening when the sound of a door slamming downstairs made them jump apart. Frank appeared in the doorway seconds later without noticing the tension in the air. "Sorry to interrupt, boss, but that buyer from Atlanta arrived. He's waiting to talk about the cotton shipment." Raphael wiped a hand over his face, composing himself. "I'm coming," he said with a rasp in his voice. Frank left. Raphael looked at Marina one more time, expression tormented. "This cannot happen," he said. "You are right. It would be disastrous for both of us." "I know," Marina agreed, although every fiber of her being screamed the opposite. "I will try to keep my distance," Raphael continued. "I'll stop coming here every day. It's better this way." Marina nodded, unable to speak. Raphael left, and Marina collapsed into the chair, trembling from head to toe. But keeping distance was easier said than done. Raphael lasted exactly 2 days without appearing in the sewing room. On the 3rd day, he returned with a flimsy excuse about checking progress. On the 4th day, he didn't even bother inventing an excuse. He simply came in, sat in the chair near the window, and stayed there. Marina didn't send him away. She couldn't. The naked truth was that both were falling into a deep and inevitable feeling, and there was no way to stop it anymore. The entire town began to notice. The gossip multiplied like fire in dry grass. Marina heard the whispers when she passed through the streets. She saw the looks of disapproval from the women at Sunday service. She felt the weight of judgment on every corner. One day, when she was walking back from the estate because the wagon had broken a wheel, 3 women surrounded her on the road. It was the same ones who had been with Margaret on the day of the public humiliation. They weren't subtle. "Shameless," one of them spat. "First she kills her husband, now she wants to snag Mr. Montgomery. Have you no decency?" Another completed with a voice full of venom. "That man is still mourning his wife, and you throw yourself at him like a bitch in heat." The third crossed her arms. "If you had an ounce of character, you'd leave this town before destroying a good man's reputation." Marina tried to pass, but they blocked the path. Her heart beat fast with fear. They were far from town, on a deserted part of the road, bordered by woods on both sides. No one would come to help if things got ugly. That was when she heard the gallop of a horse. Raphael appeared around the bend of the road, mounted on the black horse, coming fast. He must have seen the scene from afar, because he arrived with an expression of cold rage Marina had never seen. "Get out of her way," he ordered with a voice cutting like a whip. The women moved away immediately, faces white with fright. Raphael dismounted and stood between them and Marina, a posture protective and threatening at the same time. "If I hear that any of you threatened or humiliated this lady again," he said slowly, emphasizing every word, "I guarantee your husbands will lose any business they do with my estate. I guarantee your families will be excluded from any benefit I offer the community, and I guarantee you will regret it bitterly. Do you understand?" The three women stammered apologies and fled, practically running. Raphael turned to Marina, the anger disappearing instantly, replaced by concern. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" Marina shook her head, still trembling. "I'm fine, just scared me." Raphael cursed softly. "I shouldn't have let you walk. I should have sent Frank to get you. Get on the horse, I'll take you to town." "But that will only make the gossip worse," Marina protested weakly. Raphael looked into her eyes with an intensity that took her breath away. "I don't care about gossip anymore." He helped her up onto the horse, mounted behind her, and took her to the boarding house. Marina was conscious of every point where his body touched hers, of the strong arm around her waist to keep her safe, of the heat radiating from him. When they arrived in town, everyone stopped to stare. Raphael Montgomery bringing the suspicious widow riding with him. Mouths dropped open, eyes went wide, tongues started wagging before they even dismounted. Raphael didn't seem to notice or didn't care. He helped Marina down, held her hand for seconds too long, and said in a voice everyone around heard, "If you need me, send word. It doesn't matter the time. Don't let anyone intimidate you." Then he left, leaving Marina standing in front of the boarding house, with everyone staring. Mrs. Higgins appeared in the doorway with a worried expression. "Girl," she said softly, "you are playing with fire, and you're going to get burned." Marina knew. She knew she was heading straight for disaster. She knew that feeling growing between her and Raphael could only end in pain. But for the first time in her life, she was feeling something real, something deep, something worth the risk. And it didn't matter how many people said it was wrong. Her stubborn heart didn't want to listen. The following week was the hardest Marina had lived since arriving in Cedar Creek. The gossip spread like a plague, growing and distorting with every mouth that repeated it. They said Raphael and Marina were lovers. They said she had bewitched the poor widower. They said it was a matter of time before she stole everything from him and disappeared. The Reverend gave a sermon on Sunday about the temptations of the flesh and the dangers of immoral women who took advantage of good men. He didn't say Marina's name, but every eye turned to her during the service. Marina left the church with tears burning her eyes, feeling the weight of hundreds of judgments on her shoulders. Margaret ramped up the campaign against her. She visited every important family in the region, planting seeds of doubt and concern. She painted Marina as a dangerous predator, and Raphael as a vulnerable victim still deranged by the loss of his wife. Some people believed it. Others pretended to believe because it was more convenient to stay on the side of the Montgomerys. Marina continued working at the estate because she needed the money, and because, honestly, it was the only place she felt relatively safe. The estate staff treated her well, especially Hattie and Frank, who had perceived the genuine goodness in her. But even there, the tension was palpable. Raphael became more protective, more present. He didn't care anymore about hiding that he spent time with Marina. He ate lunch in the kitchen with her and the other workers, something he had never done before. Sometimes he sat in the sewing room for hours, reading or just watching her work. There was a silent declaration in that behavior. I choose her and I don't care who knows, but that only made things worse. It was on a Wednesday, 3 weeks after that almost kiss, that everything exploded for good. Marina was sewing a cream-lace dress when she heard raised voices downstairs. She recognized Raphael's voice, firm but controlled, and Margaret's voice, shrill with rage. There were other voices too, which Marina didn't identify immediately. She went down the stairs slowly, stopping on the landing where she could see the main hall, but not be seen. What she saw made her blood run cold. Margaret was there with 4 other people. An elderly man in a dark suit whom Marina recognized as Dr. Silvers, the Montgomery family lawyer, an elegant middle-aged woman who must have been a relative, and a young couple Marina didn't know. All looked at Raphael with expressions between concern and disapproval. "Raphael, you need to understand the gravity of the situation," Dr. Silvers was saying with a grave and slow voice. "Your reputation is being destroyed. People are starting to question your judgment. Some of your business partners are worried, and all because of this woman." "This woman has a name," Raphael cut in with a dangerously calm voice. "It is Marina, and she has done nothing to deserve this treatment." Margaret huffed. "She is accused of murder, Raphael. Her husband's family swore she poisoned him, and now she is here in your house, taking advantage of your loneliness." "Lies," Raphael said firmly. "All of that is lies without any proof. Her husband died of natural causes. There is a death certificate, but people prefer to believe gossip because it's easier than seeing the truth." "The truth," the elegant woman said with a cold voice, "is that you are behaving inappropriately. Clara died only 4 years ago. You should still be mourning. And instead, you are involving yourself with a woman of dubious reputation." "I am not involved with Marina," Raphael began, but the lie itself seemed bitter in his mouth. He stopped, wiped a hand over his face, and Marina saw the moment he decided on honesty. "Or rather, I am beginning to be, and I see no problem with that. She's a good person, hard-working, honest, and she makes me feel something other than loneliness for the first time in years." The silence that followed was heavy. Margaret brought a hand to her chest dramatically. "So you admit it. You are lowering yourself to have an affair with this... "Careful what you're about to say," Raphael warned with a cutting voice. Dr. Silvers cleared his throat. "Raphael, as your lawyer and family friend, I must warn you. If you continue with this behavior, there will be consequences. Socially, you will be ostracized. Commercially, many will refuse to do business with you. The Montgomery family has a reputation to uphold. Your name means something in this region." "And what do you want me to do?" Raphael asked, and Marina heard the deep weariness in his voice. "That I send Marina away? That I pretend I feel nothing? That I spend the rest of my life alone in this huge house, trapped in memories, because that is what society expects of me?" "We want you to be sensible," the elegant woman replied. "To think with your head and not with other parts. If you really want female companionship, there are girls from good families who would be honored to marry you. Colonel Bittencourt's daughter, for example, or Judge Carver's niece, decent girls of impeccable reputation." "I don't want decent girls from good families," Raphael said, and Marina felt her heart race. "I want someone who understands me, someone who looks at me and sees beyond the name Montgomery and the land, someone who knows pain and loneliness and still chooses to smile. I want Marina." Marina brought her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Tears ran down her face. He had said it. He had admitted it in front of the whole family. Margaret exploded. "You are a fool. That woman will ruin you. She'll take everything you have and then leave like she did with the previous husband, and you will be left alone again, but this time without reputation, without respect, without anything." "Enough!" Raphael roared, and everyone jumped. "I'm done. Done living for other people's expectations. Done being the eternally grieving widower everyone pities." Done pretending I'm fine when I wake up every day with an emptiness in my chest. Marina makes me feel alive again, and if that offends you, if that stains the precious Montgomery name, then maybe that name isn't worth as much as we think." Dr. Silvers raised his hands in a placating gesture. "No one is telling you to live unhappy, Raphael, but there needs to be discretion, decency, appropriate timing, and that woman is not appropriate." Marina couldn't bear to hear any more. She went up the stairs silently, went back to the sewing room, grabbed her things, and went down the back way. She passed through the kitchen where Hattie saw her and realized immediately that something was wrong. "Child, what happened?" Hattie asked with concern. Marina shook her head, unable to speak. "I need to leave," she managed to say. "I can't stay here anymore. I'm destroying his life." Hattie tried to argue, but Marina was already leaving through the back door. She walked fast down the road without looking back, tears blurring her vision. She arrived at the boarding house in the late afternoon, physically and emotionally exhausted. Mrs. Higgins was on the porch. She looked at Marina and sighed. "I had a visitor today. Mr. Montgomery's sister was here, said your time in this town is up, that it would be better for you to leave before things get ugly." "I know," Marina said with a broken voice. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning." Mrs. Higgins seemed genuinely sad. "I'm sorry, girl. You didn't deserve this. But sometimes the world is too cruel to people like us." Marina went up to her room and began to pack her few possessions. She didn't have much. It would all fit in the same small suitcase she arrived with. She worked mechanically, folding clothes, packing the sewing box, trying not to think. But the thoughts came anyway. She loved Raphael. Sometime during those weeks, between silent conversations and prolonged looks, between shared vulnerability and mutual understanding, she had fallen in love with him. True love, deep, the kind she had never felt before. The kind of love that hurts because it's real. And that was exactly why she needed to leave. Staying meant destroying everything Raphael had built. It meant watching him lose respect, lose business, be ostracized by his own family. She couldn't do that to him. Not when he had already suffered so much. She was finishing packing when she heard urgent knocking on the door. She opened it and found Frank, the foreman, with a worried expression. "The boss is looking for you," Frank said bluntly. "He came back from the meeting with the family and you were gone. He's desperate." Marina swallowed hard. "Tell him I'm fine, that I thank him for everything, that I'm leaving tomorrow morning." Frank frowned. "You shouldn't leave without talking to him." Marina shook her head, a new wave of tears threatening to fall. "It would be harder that way. It's better I leave quietly. He will understand. He'll realize it's best for everyone." Frank didn't seem convinced, but didn't argue. He turned to leave, but stopped. "Just so you know," he said, looking over his shoulder, "us at the estate, we all like you. Hattie, Benedita, the boys, me, you're good people. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." Marina thanked him with a choked voice and closed the door. She lay on the bed, fully dressed, hugging herself, and cried until she had no more tears. She woke in the middle of the night with more knocking on the door, this time more insistent. Her heart jumped. Raphael, it had to be him. She stood paralyzed, debating if she should open it. The knocking continued. "Marina," his voice came muffled through the wooden door. "Please, open up. I know you're in there. I need to talk to you." She got up slowly, legs trembling. She opened the door just a crack. Raphael was there, still in work clothes, hair disheveled as if he had run his hands through it 1,000 times, eyes red with fatigue and worry. "You were going to leave without talking to me," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a pained accusation. Marina opened the door wider, letting him in. He looked around the tiny room, saw the packed suitcase on the bed, and something broke in his expression. "You heard everything," he said, understanding. "The conversation with my family." Marina nodded. "I heard." And I understood. They are right, Raphael. I'm destroying your life, your reputation, your future. It's better I go before it gets worse. Raphael took 2 steps and gripped her shoulders. Don't say that. You aren't destroying anything. Those people, those judgments, they don't matter. Marina shook her head, trying to break free from his touch because it was too painful to be so close. They do matter. You can say they don't, but they do. You will lose business. You will lose the respect of the community. Your own sister will hate you, all because of me. It's not because of you, Raphael insisted. It's because of them. Because of a society that prefers gossip to truth, that prefers judgment to compassion. I'm not going to let those people dictate how I live my life. But Marina looked into his eyes with all the pain she felt. And I am not going to let you throw everything away for me. You deserve better. You deserve someone who brings honor to your name, not shame. Someone from a good family, of impeccable reputation. Not a widow everyone believes is a murderess. I don't want someone from a good family, Raphael said, echoing the words he had said to his family earlier. I want you. Marina felt her heart shatter. Why? Why me? I'm just a seamstress with nothing, no family, no land, no future. Why would you choose that? Raphael held her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. Because when I am with you, I forget the guilt. I forget the loneliness. I forget all the weight I carry. Because you understand me in a way no one ever has. Because when you smile, I remember that happiness exists in the world. Because I fell in love with you, Marina. Completely, irrevocably, frighteningly in love. The tears started falling again. I fell in love with you too, Marina confessed between sobs. And that is why I need to leave. Because if I stay, I'll drag you down with me. And I love you too much to do that. Then don't go, Raphael begged, his own voice breaking. Stay with me. Let's face this together. I don't care what they say. I don't care who walks away, as long as you stay. Marina closed her eyes, her whole being wanting to say yes, wanting to stay, wanting to believe their love could survive the hate of the world. But reality was cruel, and she knew that better than anyone. I can't, she whispered. I'm sorry, I can't. Raphael pulled her into a desperate hug. Marina allowed herself that moment, that last moment, feeling his warmth, the smell of earth and leather, and something indefinable that was just him. Memorizing every detail because she knew it would be the last time, then she pulled away, gentle but firm. You need to go now, before someone sees. I've already caused enough trouble. Raphael opened his mouth to protest, but she placed her fingers over his lips. Please, if you really love me, let me do this. Let me leave. It's the only way to protect you. Raphael held her hand against his face, closing his eyes. A solitary tear rolled down his masculine cheek. I will never forget you, he said with a rough voice. I will never stop loving you. Neither will I, Marina replied. But sometimes loving means letting go. Raphael left without looking back. Because if he looked, he wouldn't have the strength to leave. Marina closed the door and collapsed on the floor, hugging her knees, her body shaking with silent sobs. She left before dawn, while the town still slept. She left enough money to pay the rest of the week at the boarding house on the kitchen table, along with a thank you note for Mrs. Higgins. She took her suitcase and sewing box and started walking. She didn't know where she was going. Maybe the next village, maybe the next city, maybe she would keep walking until her strength and money ran out. It didn't matter anymore. The sun was rising, painting the sky pink and gold, when Marina stopped at the bend in the road and looked back one last time. Cedar Creek looked small in the distance, the church tower rising above the little houses, and beyond the town on the horizon, the lands of the Montgomery estate stretched green and gold. She touched her chest, where her heart ached. Goodbye, Raphael, she whispered to the wind. Be happy. Find someone who can give you what you deserve. And please forget me." Then she turned and kept walking, every step harder than the last, leaving behind the only place where she had found not just work, but also love. Marina walked for 3 hours until she reached a small settlement at the fork in the road. It was little more than 6 houses, a trading post and a chapel. She entered the post, bought bread and cheese with the little money she had, and asked the clerk about wagons or coaches passing through there. The man, an elderly fellow with white whiskers, explained that a transport wagon passed on Tuesdays and Fridays, which could take her to the larger city 20 miles from there. Today was Thursday. Marina would have to wait a day. She asked if there was anywhere she could sleep. The clerk pointed to the house of Mrs. Edith, a widow who sometimes took in travellers for a few coins. Marina thanked him and followed the instructions. Mrs. Edith was a woman of 60-something, short and plump, with a kind face and curious eyes. She examined Marina with attention that wasn't judgment, only assessment. She accepted the coins Marina offered and showed her a small room in the back, simple but clean. "You look like someone who is running away," Mrs. Edith commented bluntly. Marina didn't deny it. "I am starting over. Again." Mrs. Edith nodded as if she understood perfectly. "I ran away once too. From my first husband who beat me. Best decision I ever made. Sometimes running isn't cowardice, it's survival." Marina lay down that afternoon, too exhausted even to cry. She slept heavily and woke in the middle of the night to the sound of horses and voices outside. She paid no attention, thinking it was travellers passing by. She went back to sleep. She woke in the morning with Mrs. Edith knocking on the door urgently. "Girl, wake up! There is a man out there looking for you." Marina sat up in bed, heart racing. "Who?" "I don't know the name, but by the look of his clothes and horse, he's a man of means. Said he is looking for a seamstress named Marina who passed through here yesterday." Marina got up quickly, her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. Raphael. It was Raphael. She ran to the window and looked carefully. He was there in front of the trading post, talking to the clerk. Even from a distance, Marina saw the tension in his shoulders, the worry stamped on his posture. He had come after her. Part of Marina wanted to run out there and throw herself into his arms, but the rational part, the part that knew the consequences, held her in place. Mrs. Edith entered the room and looked at her. "You don't want to talk to him?" Marina shook her head, tears already falling. "I can't. If I talk to him, I'll give in. And I can't give in. It's better for him if I simply disappear." Mrs. Edith frowned. "Better for him or better for you? Because it looks to me like you are both suffering equally." Marina didn't answer. Mrs. Edith sighed. "I'll say you aren't here, but girl, think hard about what you are doing. True love doesn't come around twice in a life." Mrs. Edith left. Marina watched through the window as she spoke with Raphael, how he insisted, how she denied firmly. Finally, Raphael gave up, mounted his horse, and left in the opposite direction from where Marina had come. He was going to search the road ahead, thinking she had continued her journey. Marina sat on the bed, burying her face in her hands. She had made the right choice. She was sure of it, so why did it hurt so much? Hello, I know you are enjoying this story. If you can, leave a like and share with someone who will also like this tale. It helps me a lot to keep bringing these emotional stories to you. Marina spent that entire day locked in the room, refusing food, just lying there staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Edith respected her silence, but at dinner time knocked on the door firmly. "Come eat. I don't accept guests dying of hunger in my house." Marina obeyed more out of politeness than hunger. She sat at the kitchen table while Mrs. Edith served vegetable soup and bread. "You are going to tell me what happened," the older woman said. It wasn't a request. Marina sighed and, for the first time since it all began, told the complete story to someone. She spoke about Arthur and the accusations, about arriving in Cedar Creek, about meeting Raphael, about the impossible love that grew between them, about his family and the social pressure, about the decision to leave. Mrs. Edith listened to everything in silence. When Marina finished, the older woman shook her head. "You are a fool, my child, a fool and noble, but mostly a fool. You think you are protecting that man, but you are just causing more pain for both of you." "But people will destroy him if he stays with me," Marina protested. "He will lose everything." Mrs. Edith gave a dry laugh. "He already lost everything when he lost his wife. The rest is just dirt and money. That can be rebuilt. But love, true love, that isn't found easily. And you are throwing it away because of gossip from small-minded people." Marina had no answer. Mrs. Edith continued, "Look, I don't know this man, but from the way you describe him, he already made his choice. He chose you. He chose to defend you, chose to come after you, and you are taking away his right to make that choice. You are deciding for him. That isn't love. That's fear." The words hit Marina like a punch to the stomach. It was true. She was afraid. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid that one day Raphael would wake up and regret it. Afraid of causing his ruin and watching him hate her for it. It was easier to leave now than face the possibility of future rejection. But Mrs. Edith was right. Raphael had made his choice, and she was disrespecting that by running away. She was treating him as incapable of deciding his own destiny. "I don't know what to do," Marina confessed with a small voice. Mrs. Edith took her hand across the table. "Yes, you know, you are just afraid to do it." Marina spent the night awake, internal conflict corroding her. At dawn she made a decision. She was going back. She was going back to Cedar Creek. She was going to face Raphael and let him make his choice. If he still wanted her, knowing all the consequences, she would stay, and they would face the world together. But when she went down for breakfast, Mrs. Edith had news. "That man who was looking for you came back early today, passed by here galloping like the devil was on his heels, heading back to town. Looked desperate." Marina felt a tightness in her chest. Something was wrong. She thanked Mrs. Edith for the hospitality, grabbed her things, and started walking back to Cedar Creek as fast as she could. It took 4 hours. The sun was already high when she saw the town appear in the distance, and immediately she realized something was happening. There was unusual movement in the square. People gathered, voices rising. Marina quickened her pace. When she got closer, she saw that practically the whole town was in the square. And in the center, on top of a wagon that served as an improvised stage, was Raphael. He was in his Sunday best, dark suit and white shirt, hat in hand. He looked like he hadn't slept, deep circles marking his face, but there was a fierce determination in his posture. Marina stopped at the edge of the crowd, hidden behind other people, trying to understand what was happening. Raphael's voice rose, strong and clear. "I gathered you all here today because I need to say some things I should have said a long time ago. You know me. You've known my family for generations. You know I have always tried to be a fair, honorable man who keeps his word." The crowd murmured in agreement. Marina saw Margaret in the front row with a furious expression. She saw the reverend, the merchants, the women who had humiliated her, all the people who had judged her. Raphael continued. "A few weeks ago, a woman arrived in our town. Her name is Marina Sutton. She is a widow, a seamstress, and was looking to start life over after being unjustly accused of things she didn't commit. I hired her to work at my estate. And you, this community that claims to be Christian, that preaches love and compassion, treated her like trash." Heavy silence fell over the square. Some lowered their eyes in shame, others crossed their arms defensively. "You spread gossip," Raphael said, every word falling like a hammer. You publicly humiliated her, refused her work, threatened her on the road, preached sermons on morality while demonstrating pure immorality in the form of gratuitous cruelty. And all why? Because you heard rumors. Because it was easier to believe gossip than get to know the person. The Reverend tried to intervene. Mr. Montgomery, with all due respect, there are legitimate concerns about this young lady's reputation. Reputation, Raphael cut him off, is what people say about you when you aren't looking in their eyes. And based on that, in this square today, the reputation of half of you is worse than anything you accuse Marina of being. Marina brought her hand to her mouth, tears running down. He was defending her. Publicly, in front of everyone, burning bridges that couldn't be rebuilt. Raphael continued, his voice becoming softer but no less intense. I lost my wife 4 years ago. Clara was a good woman, and I loved her within the limitations of what we knew as love. When she died, part of me died too. I spent 4 years existing but not living, fulfilling roles but not feeling, until Marina arrived. And for the first time since Clara was gone, I felt something other than guilt and loneliness. I felt hope. I felt the possibility of happiness. I felt true love. The crowd exploded in shocked whispers. Margaret shouted something Marina didn't catch. Raphael raised his hand, asking for silence. I know you find this scandalous. I know you find it inappropriate, too fast, shameful. But you know what I find shameful. Having to choose between being happy and being accepted. Having to hide true feelings because society decided there is a right time for the heart to stop hurting. Having to prove I deserve to love again, as if love were a privilege that needs to be earned. He looked around, his eyes scanning every face in the crowd. Marina stood frozen when his gaze passed over where she was, but he didn't see her yet. So I am here today to say that I don't care anymore. I don't care about your opinions. I don't care about gossip. I don't care about being ostracized or having business refused. Because I choose Marina. I choose her over your approval. I choose her happiness, and mine over social conformity. And if that makes me a fallen man, without morals, then so be it. That was when Raphael finally saw her. His eyes found her in the crowd, and everything else disappeared. He jumped down from the wagon, ignoring Margaret's screams, ignoring people trying to talk to him, pushing his way through the crowd to Marina. She was paralyzed, tears streaming uncontrollably. When he got close, she managed to whisper, "You are crazy. You just threw everything away." Raphael smiled, a true and free smile she had never seen before. "I threw nothing away. I finally chose what really matters." He held her hands. "I love you, Marina. I love your strength, your kindness, your courage. I love how you make me feel alive. I love how you understand my pain and don't try to fix it. Just stand by my side while I heal. I love you, and I won't hide it anymore." Marina sobbed. "I love you too, but the people." "Damn the people," Raphael said, and there was wild freedom in those words. Then, right there, in the middle of the square, with the whole town watching, he pulled her into a kiss. It was a deep, desperate kiss, full of all the love and pain and hope they had kept stored away. Marina held onto him as if she were drowning, and he was the only air available. The world around them vanished. There were no more judgments, no more fear. There was only the two of them, and this impossible love that had become the only real thing. When they finally broke apart, the square was in complete chaos. Half the people were talking at once, shocked. Margaret had left, refusing to watch. The Reverend looked about to faint, but there were also some surprised and perhaps even admiring faces. Mrs. Higgins from the boarding house had tears in her eyes. Frank and Hattie, who had come from the estate, were smiling openly. Raphael held Marina's hand and raised it, showing everyone. "This is the woman I choose," he declared. "This is the woman I will court, if she will have me. And if you cannot accept that, then you will have to deal with your own consciences, because we aren't going anywhere." Marina looked at him with love so intense it hurt. "I accept," she said. "I accept you, I accept this love. I accept the challenges to come, because you are worth all that and more." They left the square hand in hand, leaving behind the crowd still in shock. They walked to the estate, talking for the first time without weight, without fear, just being themselves. The following weeks were not easy. Part of the community did indeed ostracize them. Margaret cut ties with her brother completely, swearing never to speak to him again as long as he was with that woman. Some business partners pulled away. The Reverend refused to greet Raphael in the street, but others surprised them. Mrs. Higgins visited Marina at the estate and apologized for not being kinder from the start. Some younger women in town, tired of the hypocrisy, began to accept sewing orders from Marina. Frank and the other estate staff became like family, and slowly, very slowly, the town began to see that Marina was a good person, see that the love between her and Raphael was genuine, see that maybe, just maybe, they had been cruel for no reason. Raphael courted Marina properly, despite living on the same property. He took her for wagon rides at sunset, brought wildflowers, sat in the sewing room talking for hours. Small gestures of affection that made her heart melt, lingering looks, hands that met and intertwined, smiles that said more than words. It was 3 months later that Raphael proposed officially. They were in the cotton field, the sun setting golden on the horizon. He knelt right there in the dirt, held her hands, and asked if she would make him the happiest man in the world by marrying him. Marina said yes, crying, and he slipped a simple gold ring on her finger that had belonged to his grandmother. They married on a Saturday in July of 1924 in a small ceremony at the estate, since the Reverend refused to perform the wedding in the church. A justice of the peace officiated. Only true friends were present. Frank was best man, Hattie was maid of honor, and when Raphael kissed the bride, everyone applauded with genuine joy. The life they built together wasn't perfect, but it was real. Marina continued sewing, but now by choice, not necessity. Raphael continued working the land, but now he returned home every night to loving arms. They faced storms, overcame difficulties, but always together. The town eventually accepted, because true love is hard to deny when you see it bloom in front of your eyes. Even Margaret, years later, apologized quietly, acknowledging she had been wrong. 6 years after the wedding, on a sunny spring morning in 1930, Marina was on the porch of the main house that was now truly her home. She was sewing a small blanket, stitches perfect as always. At 32, she was more beautiful than ever, her face illuminated by deep happiness. Raphael climbed the porch steps, returning from the fields. He was 44 now, a few more grey hairs, but his eyes no longer carried that ancient sadness, only peace and love. He leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "How are you feeling?" Marina smiled, touching her belly that was starting to round. "Good. Tired, but good. He is active." Raphael laughed, placing his large hand over her belly. "Or she." Marina placed her hand over his. "I don't care. I just want it to be healthy." "It will be," Raphael said with conviction, "and it will be loved as I love his mother." Marina looked at her husband, at the man who had risked everything for her, and felt immense gratitude. "We made it," she said softly. "Despite everything, we made it." Raphael pulled her into a gentle hug. "We made it because we didn't give up, because we chose love over fear, and because in the end, that was the only thing that mattered." They stayed there hugging while the sun turned the cotton fields gold, two survivors who had found in each other not just love, but redemption. The life that had seemed impossible had become the most beautiful reality, And Cedar Creek, the town that once rejected them, now told their story to new generations. The story of Marina and Raphael. The most beautiful love story between the wealthy farmer and the young widow no one accepted. The story that proved that when love is true, it doesn't just survive the judgment of the world, it transforms it.